Welcome to the Metal Verbalizers podcast. There are a lot of hardworking musicians and great music in underground metal. We want to support this, so we started this podcast. We also want to share the great underground music with you listening. If you enjoyed this podcast, your support is very important, because the more people who find us, the more we can support the bands that we verbalize. In this episode, I will introduce a band by talking about the band's sound, influences, lyrics, name, future plans, and more. I'm Johan Verbalizer, and this episode will be dedicated to the band Drowning in Blood. Drowning in Blood is a thrash metal band from Canada and was started in 2020. Before starting Drowning in Blood, Chris and Noah, who are now members of Drowning in Blood, were both members of another band called False Gods. Eventually, Chris and Noah started having some issues with the other members of False Gods. As far as I understand, the issues had to do with problems about getting everyone together for jamming sessions. It seems like this was one of the reasons why Chris and Noah eventually decided to start Drowning in Blood. However, before they started a new band, Chris and Noah began writing music for False Gods without the other members. But when Chris and Noah presented the music they had written, the other members didn't really like it, and they wanted to change a lot of things with it. Chris and Noah were, on the other hand, really satisfied with the result and didn't want to make these changes. The solution Chris and Noah reached was that they would record these songs anyway, the way they were from the beginning, but as a solo project and under a different name, the name Drowning in Blood. Chris and Noah started getting more and more invested in Drowning in Blood and eventually decided to leave False Gods. They were joined by more musicians, and Drowning in Blood developed from being basically a solo project or like a side project to becoming a proper band that it is today. Drowning in Blood doesn't seem to really have any main influences as a band, but the band's main influences are basically defined by each member's individual influences. For example, Chris is mainly influenced by old school Metallica and that type of melodic thrash punk sound that they used to have at that time. But he is also very influenced by more modern bands such as Toxic Holocaust and Warbringer. Noah is mainly influenced by bands such as Megadeth, Lamb of God, and Havoc, etc. He is generally more into the technical style of thrash. Justin simply really loves Exodus. But to be completely honest, who doesn't love Exodus? Am I right? It seems like Nick tends to be influenced by bands like Death and Revocation. So I guess if you take all these influences and sounds and combine them into one thrash sound, I guess you would get the sound of Drowning in Blood. The result is a really cool thrash sound that I would personally compare to a band such as Warbringer, for example. Basically, my point is that if you really like Warbringer, then I see no reason why you wouldn't really like Drowning in Blood. Of course, it doesn't come as a great surprise that a thrash metal band is playing at a really high tempo and really fast, but something that I personally really like with Drowning in Blood specifically is that they definitely deliver the type of fast thrash that we love, but they're also making sure to kind of slow down a little bit to also make time for some of those slower and great heavy riffs. But it doesn't end there either, because they are also adding some great melodies in there, which results in a great combination and a mix of different things that works really well together. The length of the songs tend to range somewhere between 4 to 5 minutes, around that range basically, with some exceptions here and there. I think that is a pretty good range. Currently, the Drowning in Blood discography is the demo Crush the Weak from 2021, the single Resist Revolt from 2022, and the EP You Won But At What Cost from 2024. In my personal opinion, I don't think that it really matters too much which one you will listen to first. Regardless which one you would choose, I think you'll get a great introduction to the music of Drowning in Blood, and I really don't think that you will be disappointed, regardless which one you would choose. The song Crushing the Weak seems like the band's most popular song, at least if you judge based on the band's Spotify page, and I can definitely see why. It is a really cool song. When it comes to the image of Drowning in Blood, the band haven't really dedicated themselves to one theme or one subject that follows through every release. Basically, the band is deciding what each release is supposed to be about, what message they want to send, and what the release is supposed to represent individually. When they have made this decision, they are contacting an artist, telling the artist about their ideas, and the artist will then help them visualize it. You can also clearly tell that the Drowning in Blood logo is meant to look very thrash, especially by having a lot of sharp edges, which does indeed make it look very thrash. In addition, the band also decided to add drops dripping from the logo, this being a direct reference to the band's name, probably doesn't come as a great surprise. The lyrics of Drowning in Blood generally tend to deal with the classic thrash metal subjects such as war, revolution, liberty, and other similar subjects. Even though the lyrics do include politics, the band is very careful about it. They're trying very hard to write in a way that doesn't end up preachy, because Drowning in Blood feels that it is a very important part that the listener must be able to interpret the lyrics and think about these subjects on their own, not being told what to think, pretty much. Like Drowning in Blood wrote themselves, quote, "If you get into specifics about politics, you can get into a lot of shit, and we just aren't interested in any of that," end of quote. When it comes to the name, unfortunately, it doesn't seem like the band really knows the exact reason, which is kind of a shame, in my opinion, because I really enjoy reading about the name origins of the bands we feature. But Drowning in Blood is basically meant to be a cool and badass sounding name. And that is something I would definitely agree with. It is definitely a cool sounding name, and a name that definitely caught my attention for sure. The name was actually decided even before the type of music was decided, which I thought was a very, very interesting thing. When it comes to the future of Drowning in Blood, the band's main priority now is touring and playing live. For example, they're planning to play in more countries next year. They're currently deciding whether it's going to be in Europe or in the USA. Since I'm sitting in Europe, I obviously hope that it's going to be in Europe, but I guess we can all hope that Drowning in Blood will play in both Europe and the USA in the near future. Let's hope. Another thing that Drowning in Blood really wanted me to mention in this episode is that they have a thrash mixtape on Spotify. I would strongly recommend that you do check this out, because I've looked through the mixtape myself and looked through what type of songs and what type of bands it includes, and it does include a lot of fantastic music that I personally love very, very much. It includes both old school thrash and some of the great classics, stuff like that, as well as some great new wave thrash. It actually even includes some bands that I have featured before on this podcast, such as, for example, the band Thrashist Regime, Bare Knuckle Brawl, Idle Ruin, Sublimed, Murdoch 104, Kampa, Tymo, etc. So I would strongly recommend you to definitely look into that thrash mixtape. These are my thoughts and comments about the band, but now I would like to hear your thoughts. What do you think about Drowning in Blood? Do you have a favorite song by this band? If so, which one? let us know in the YouTube comments or on social media. We have now reached the end of this episode. It means a lot to me that you've been listening all the way to the end. I really appreciate that. If you want to support us, great ways of doing so are subscribing on YouTube as well as following on Spotify, Facebook and Instagram. While you are on Spotify, feel free to also rate the podcast, as well as generally liking, commenting and sharing. All of this can be done very quickly, very easily, and completely free. But it would really help the podcast and the bands that we verbalize. We would be very thankful. We will be back to verbalize again next week.